From meth to reunification.
This conversation starts now on Foster.
Foster Life today. Tristan was unable to be here with us, so my oldest son, Brian, decided that he would come and sit in with me today. How you doing today?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Yep.
Does it feel weird to be on this end because you're usually on the other end of the camera? So does it feel better to be in front of it or behind it?
I don't know. To me, it feels the same.
To a lady, her name is Pati, and she came to me about a week ago, and we had a nice conversation on the phone. And I said, why don't you be on the show? I think you would be awesome. And I think she's going to encourage social workers. She's going to encourage foster parents. She's going to encourage bio parents. I think she's going to hit the whole spectrum of people because sometimes the outcome isn't always what we want. It's not always reunification, as we all know. But sometimes it's reunification. And these parents work very hard working their plan, as we call it, so that their kids can come back and be a family together again. She went from meth all the way to reunification, and she has an amazing story that she's going to share with us today on Foster Life. So when we come back, we're going to be visiting with Pati right here on Foster Life, and I think she has a special guest with her as well. You ready? All right, we'll be back.
Hi, I'm Mitchell. I'm from the Netherlands, and we love foster kids.
Foster Life. Today is Wednesday. It's the first Wednesday of March already. It seems like we just had Christmas and Thanksgiving and all of that stuff, and now we're already in March. Spring's going to be here before we know it.
I'm ready.
Now, do you like all this cold weather?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Summer and spring.
This is my friend Pati that I was telling you about before we went to commercial, and Pati has a remarkable story. And she doesn't like winter either, and I know, as you all know, I would rather be on a beach somewhere. So we're going to jump right into this. Brian's here for moral support, and if he has any questions, he'll make sure to ask those as well. Next Monday, before we get started, Courtney is going to be back on Foster Life this Friday. Tristan will be back in the seat. He just had something come up today, and so Brian is joining me here as well. So, tell me a little bit about your life just growing up, just briefly.
Well, I grew up in a small town, just kind of average life. My sister and I were in and out of foster care a little bit,
Okay.
Group homes a little bit, just kind of troubled, but not enough trouble to be in jail.
Right.
In my younger years.
Cool. And so, at what age did you first go into foster care? Do you remember?
Oh gosh, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4.
Okay.
And I'd say somewhere around there.
Okay, so then From what I understand from just seeing your story and talking to you, then life was pretty good in high school.
Average. I mean, I lived on my own.
Okay.
But it was. I consider it was good. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. And so, what happened right after high school? Did you go to college, or
No, I actually-
take me through there?
I actually dropped out of high school.
Okay.
In '98, which was supposed to be my senior year,
Okay.
because I was short on credits,
Uh-huh.
and so I just quit.
Were you short on credits because of being in and out of foster care? Was that?
Well, I actually lived on my own I finally signed my first lease about 16,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was more of an attendance issue. I was working full time to pay rent.
Uh-huh.
Just life. When
Right.
you're 16 and 17, if you don't want to go to school, you don't go to school.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
you have your own house.
Right.
And so when you make the rules, sometimes when you're young, you don't make the best rules.
Right.
And so I just failed some classes that were mandatory, and we found out, I'll never forget, it was senior run day,
Uh-huh.
and they said Patricia can't be in any of the photos because she's not a senior.
Ah.
And so at that point, I just kind of gave up hope. I mean, you know, you've spent so many years with your friends, and you're not graduating because your credit's short, and so I just gave up hope and I quit.
Okay. So what happened? What'd you do after you quit high school?
I just worked and drank and lived my life.
Okay.
Moved up to Aurora when I was about 18. After that, my grandparents lived in that town, so I moved to the town of Aurora, made friends, and just worked and lived life.
Cool. So at what age did you get pregnant?
I got pregnant at 20 and had my twins at 21.
Okay. And you hadn't used it at this point?
I would say recreational in high school, just
Right.
nothing serious. You know, at a party, maybe on the weekend. Nothing that I would consider. Obviously, I don't think you should do drugs ever.
Right.
But it was just playing. It was nothing that I was constantly seeking drugs or.
Experiment.
Right. If they were there, I would do them. But
Right.
it wasn't what I would consider.
Okay. So the twins were born.
Mm-hmm.
How did that go? Your 20 twins were born. Did you have a husband or a
That
boyfriend
went
or?
terrible. I was with the girls' dad for a number of years before.
Okay.
When I was about 18.
Uh-huh.
We were on again, off again,
Mm-hmm.
alcoholic young kids.
Right.
You know? Found out we were having the twins. Stayed together. They were born at 30 weeks. So Taylor weighed 1 pound and 15 ounces, or Taylor weighed 212 and Carol weighed 115. So they were in the hospital for a long time.
Tiny.
Yeah, they were little babies.
Mhm.
Kara stayed 6 weeks and Taylor stayed 4.
Mhm.
We brought them home from the hospital, and we didn't get along. And so when they were about 2 weeks old, I got my own apartment. When they were a year old, he moved for 5 years.
Wow.
And so it was just me and the girls. Just
So you're like 20 years old when you
21.
21 when you moved out on your own, and you had these new babies
Mm-hmm.
that were little, and they were twins,
And they were special needs.
and they were special needs.
Mm-hmm.
So what was their special needs?
Kara is completely blind in one eye.
Uh-huh.
And Taylor has cerebral palsy. Taylor doesn't walk. So her delays weren't really obvious until milestones, until milestones started coming up. And then she just wasn't meeting them. She wasn't sitting up. She wasn't learning to walk. And Kara was. And so all the things that come with cerebral palsy.
So
wheelchairs,
21 special needs and on your own
Mhm.
in your apartment. Were you working?
On and off. My grandparents own grocery stores, so I would work for them. Mostly the girls did get disabilities, so I used that to pay the rent and
Right.
to live.
Uh-huh. Cool. And so then what was the next step after that? So the girls were born, kind of working on and off, using disability, and where do we go from there?
Stayed single for a while. Met another guy. Stayed with him for about 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
We were insane alcoholics together. We drank every day. And the kids were just kind of there.
Right.
I don't know, looking back, that there was a lot of parenting going on.
Mm-hmm.
We just drank every day and fought every night. And that was life for about 6 years.
Wow.
And so when the kids were about 10 at this point, twins, I left. I
Wow.
said, this isn't going anywhere. It's just a
Right.
vicious cycle of cheating, lying, fighting, cheating, lying, fighting.
Mhm.
And at some point you have to stop breaking your own heart.
Right. Exactly.
And I knew that. And so I sit at home for about 5 days, laid in my floor and cried because I had a broken heart.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it is what it is.
Right.
I knew that the relationship wasn't going anywhere, and I didn't know how to get out of it.
Right.
I ended up going out to a bar, and my kids, previously, they just spent a lot of time at babysitters. I was running, you know, and I went out to a bar, and I had a friend that had some meth.
Uh-huh.
I used it.
Right.
And the next day, I realized that I hadn't thought about that relationship at all,
Uh-huh.
and it all went downhill from there.
Wow. Okay, so when we come back, we're going to talk more with Pati about her journey. But before we come back, I want to make something very clear that I think is very admirable. Both times you were pregnant, you didn't use it all.
None.
And I think that's very admirable. So when we come back, we're going to explore more of your story right after this.
Foster TV is looking for 12 nonprofits in the United States that serve or work with foster and adopted youth. Send us a short story or email about how you support the community.
So send your story today.
Welcome back to Foster Life. We're with Pati today, and we're talking. I hate saying this in front of her, but we've done it on all of our bumpers. This segment's actually called From Meth to Reunification, and she has a really good story here. And where we just left off, so you were talking about the boyfriend had left, you guys had went on your own, you had went out to a bar, and you did some meth.
Yeah.
And where'd it go from there?
Literally, I mean, I remember not waking up, we'd stay up all night. The next day, and I realized that I hadn't thought about the relationship that had controlled my life for so long.
Right.
And I didn't want it to control my life anymore. It was at a place that I knew it needed to end, but we had such a vicious cycle of breaking up, getting back together, breaking up, getting back together, breaking up, getting back together over the 6 years, that I knew that if I didn't leave for good, that it would continue like that.
Right.
And so I just called a friend the next day and asked if she had more.
Right.
And she did. And so I didn't get high with anybody. I got high at home by myself.
Uh-huh.
Because I thought that made me different.
Right.
If nobody knows.
Uh-huh.
You know? And I ended up going back home for a foster reunion.
Uh-huh.
This is probably 6 to 8 months after, and I've been using pretty much daily, unbeknownst to everybody.
Right.
I was getting skinnier, but not enough to notice.
Right.
So I went back home for a class reunion, met up with the guy that I went to school with for a long time. We ended up getting together. We got married after about 6 months.
Wow. Okay.
He had some drug issues. That's his story, so I won't go into that.
Right.
But we just jumped. And so it was daily drug use for a couple of years. And then I got pregnant with my youngest. I actually took a pregnancy test as I had a lot of money out, waiting on stuff to come in to get high. And I called the lady and I said, you're going to have to keep it. So I stayed sober for my entire pregnancy.
Right.
And then I had Siley, and she was healthy, 6.5-pound baby.
Cool.
And even in my pregnancy pictures, you can tell my going home pictures with Siley, I still look like I had done drugs for a long time. But I had actually been sober for 9 months.
Right.
And I stayed sober for about 4 or 5 months. And I thought, let's do a little bit.
Right.
And so I went and got it, and it came back with a vengeance.
So in all these years, from the time you started at the bar, clear through your pregnancy, up till your pregnancy, where were the twins at?
They were in the house and I was in my bedroom.
So they would be home, but you were in your bedroom and
Getting
that
high.
kind of stuff. So at what point did family services get involved?
In August, on the 26th of August, Siley would have been right at probably around 18 months old, 13 or 18 months without sitting here doing the math.
Right.
Um,
So about a year and a half. Okay.
of use. We had a well child check one time on New Year's Eve, but the cops came over and the house was clean, and so we didn't look typical, I suppose. I don't know.
Right.
He left, and that was that. And then about 6 months after that,
Who did the well child check? Do you know?
I
Or
don't
do you
remember the
suspect?
officer's name.
Oh.
I will say no, because I don't think that's fair to assume,
Right.
and I think that sometimes you blame people that didn't have anything to do with it.
Right. So somebody just
Called in a well child.
called in a well child
Mhm.
check, and the officer came, didn't find any reason to really.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And so then, probably 8 or 9 months later, I had asked my husband to leave, and I was turned in 5 times in one day, on Friday.
Wow.
And so at that point, they don't investigate, they take your kids, and they
Right.
do the investigating after.
Right.
And so they came, and I knew that they couldn't do anything without the cops. And so when the caseworker knocked on my door, I said, come back when you have what you need to take my children. And I called my sister and I said, they'll be back in 45 minutes to take my kids.
Okay.
And in an hour and 5 minutes, they were back.
And so where did the kids go at that point?
They took the twins from school. They were in the public school, so they
Okay.
took them from school to their dad's house, and they took Siley foster care. I was so romantic at the time, and I lived probably 3 doors down from my grandma, and they had said that they would take Siley there, and then they decided that because of my behavior, my erratic behavior, I mean, I was crazy, I was
Right.
crazed, you know, that was not a safe place for Siley. So they waited until 5:30 when the office is closed, and they told my grandma Siley couldn't stay there, and they put her in foster care. I believe that she went to Marshfield, Missouri. The family's name,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Um,
So did you, while they were in foster care, while they were in the system, while the girls were at the dad and in care, did you still have visits? Were you still doing visits and that sort of thing?
Our plan, like they do,
Right.
did allow 1-hour visits supervised. So,
Once a week?
Mhm.
Okay.
I stayed sober all through September.
Okay. So they went in August.
Uh-huh.
You stayed sober all September.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then they hadn't drug tested me one time.
Oh yeah.
And I thought, they're not ever gonna drug test me. It's been 5 weeks.
They're going.
And I believe there is a demon in meth, and that's just all there is to it.
Oh yeah.
And so I said, I'm gonna get high, and I'm gonna go file for divorce, because I didn't have the courage to do it sober. And so I got high, and I went and filed for divorce, and I got back to my house, and I lit my pipe, and I was smoking, and I looked down on my phone, and my caseworker was calling for a drug test.
Ah.
And so I failed. And that was October 8th of 2013, and that's the last day that I got high.
So October 13th of 2013.
13.
When we come back, one of your daughters is here,
Right, Kara.
Kara, one of the twins, and she's gonna just join us, just come and be a part. But I think just meeting you guys, it's neat to see the relationship you have. But we're gonna pick it up from the last time you got high to how you worked your plan, the things that you did, and what really drove you to do it. Because sometimes, not always, but sometimes our parents will start and then they kind of fizz out. And I think it's important to see how we went through this process. So we'll come back. Kira's going to be with us. Patty's going to be with us. And we're going to talk about the reunification part right after this. today we're talking with Patti, and this is her daughter, Kira, right? Is that right? You can talk. I promise. The mics will pick you up. And she's here with us today. So we're at the part where your kids have been, the twins have gone to dad's, and then your other daughter has gone into foster care. And you were sober for a month, and then you decided to use it. At that point, your caseworker was wanting a drug test. So take me up from there.
So I took my drug test and I failed.
Right?
And they said, you start over today. And I was basically a week away from an extra hour, because it's 1 hour visits for a while and you work your way up. So I had to start the plan over.
Yep.
And anybody who's ever been through this understands they don't play around. They're just cut and dry.
Exactly.
Like,
There's kids
you start
involved.
over, and in older processes, they would take your kids and run that and then do an adoption plan. Well, they don't do that now.
Right.
They run concurrent plans, and that's what we were under. We were under the new process of doing things.
Right.
And my caseworker just looked at me and he said, we will take your kids. They won't be back. And I just knew that day that whatever voice, I think that we all have a voice that talks to us in our head. Maybe it's our moral compass, maybe it's our lack of a moral compass, but we still hear that voice. And the day that I failed the drug test, I realized the voice that was talking to me was lying. And I knew that I had to do something. And so I literally wrote on my living room wall 10/31 on 10/8 of 2013, and I said this will be the last time that that's my sobriety date. And it has been. And so I began to work a plan, which included lots of court dates, lots of requirements. You go to treatment, you see your kids at this time, and it's hard going through those plans.
FST meetings and permanency meetings and court dates and all kinds of stuff. And you were probably drug tested throughout the process. And so, what age were the twins at this point when they went to dad's?
12.
12. So they were at a crucial time in their life as well. And so as you were working the plan, what did that look like for you? How did you stay sober? What gave you the desire to want to be sober?
It looked dreadful. I mean, it looked like judgment. It looked like going to a bunch of people who didn't know where I was coming from.
Right.
It looked like going and having to listen to the judge read this dreadful story of how I treated my kids, and not understanding that was just part of the court process.
Right.
Like, I felt judged and attacked every time they read that, because I would be 1 month sober, 2 months sober, but I'm having a report read from the day they took my kids when I wasn't sober. And so it was hard. It was attending therapies. It was a lot of yes sir, no ma'ams, when that's not what I wanted to do. You know, it just is a lot of saying whatever you tell me to do. And I did hire an attorney, and my attorney looked me right in the face and said, you've hired me, but there's nothing I can do. You will do what the state says, or you won't have your children.
Right. And that's kind of the gist of it. I mean, at that point, the goal is always reunification. That's what we're taught that we need to work for. But if you're not working the plan, and you're not doing what's required, they're going to do what's in the best interest of the children every time. And so you have to work that plan. And I'm sure that part of your plan was because you did love your kids and you did want to be a part of their life. Is that true?
Absolutely. I think that there are family cycles, perhaps the things that I lived through that I didn't think that I would ever put my kids through. And I realized that I had placed them in the exact same position. And I just wanted different for them.
Right.
So part of my support plan was to find a church.
Right.
And so I did that. And I've been attending that church for 5 years now. I found support there. I think one of the hardest steps of sobriety is realizing that you don't have any friends in the drug world. So you're alone. You've lost your children, you've lost your job, your home, your car,
Yep.
and every friend that you thought you ever had.
Yep.
And so it's lonely. And I joined the church and they worked that into my plan, and it took about a year, about 9 to 11 months of counseling. I had to go and report, twice, sometimes 3 times a week.
Right.
And just literally doing what they asked me to do,
Right.
whether I thought it made sense or not. Because my attorney just said, you do what they say or your kids are not coming home.
Right. I think one of the things that I've learned, because as you know, I have a history of working with people that struggle with addiction and that kind of stuff. And if you're watching today and you're in the spot that Patty's at, or maybe you're a little past that, or you're a little before that, or wherever you're at in this journey, I'm going to tell you right now, changing your people, places, and things.
Absolutely.
That's by far, when I see people that are successful in this journey, that really stands out to me. It's because they changed their people, places, and things. They got rid of all of that stuff, and it is lonely. I've never met an addict that didn't say that time was lonely for them.
I think for me, it was about realizing that people who will support you in addiction, whether it's alcohol or drug use or anything that could potentially cause the separation of you and your children,
Right.
or cause you to go to jail, those people cannot be friends. Common sense says people that would introduce anything that could negatively impact your children's lives, those aren't true friends.
Right.
And it is a lonely road, but at some point you have to realize that lonely feels a lot better than the desperate place that addiction takes you.
Right. So there's steps in
Absolutely.
reunification. So what was the first major step that you remember as far as your reunification plan? Like for some of my parents, it's when that visit goes from 1 hour to 2 hours. That's a big thing. So what do you remember as your first major step in reunification that you thought, okay, I think I'm on the right path now?
Probably my first overnight visit with them. Because I was a single mom for a long time. So the
Right.
twins had about 6 years with just me.
Right.
So they were with their dad now, but he had only been back for about 6 years.
Right.
So they're, for me, and especially Taylor, who has special needs, I'm her all in all.
Right.
And so every visit, she did nothing but cry. You remember? Every 1 hour visit, she cried the entire time because she knew that she couldn't stay. And so when they finally got to stay the night and my kids got to be in one place, that was the big deal. And they just sat and hugged each other. And I wept because I realized that it wasn't my life that I had destroyed. It was my kids'. They had been sent to 2 separate homes and they loved each other.
Right.
And I knew that whatever it took, I had to fix this. I had to fix it because there wasn't anybody else that could stay sober for me. There wasn't anybody else that could give my children togetherness.
Right.
Because they do have different dads. If they separate or if they don't come back into my home, they're going to be separated forever. And their hearts were broken over so many things. And to just see them hugging each other, because this was their first reunification too since we split up. Because Siley was in foster care and the girls were with their dads. So they went months without seeing each other because our visits weren't at the same time. I would go see them for 1 hour supervised and then get to see Siley for 1 hour supervised, but they didn't get to see each other.
Right.
And so it was at that point that, and it's not like it's not a pat yourself on the back thing, but that's when it broke my heart enough to say, you've got to do something bigger than yourself. You've got to fix this for your kids.
Right. And I think though, during the process, you kind of have to pat yourself on the back a little bit because
well, nobody else is going to do it.
Yeah, because you're working the plan.
Right.
And you're starting to go down that road. Were you nervous the first overnight? Some of my parents say they were really nervous that first overnight, when they first came home.
No, I wasn't nervous.
You were
I was
nervous?
just happy.
Right.
Maybe nervous that the DFS people were going to show up and I wasn't doing it right.
Right.
Which isn't true. You know, if
Yeah.
you're being a parent, they're happy.
Right.
And so I would say that maybe that fear just, am I doing what they need me to do? Because I wanted to follow their plan.
Right. And foster parents, if you're watching, we go through the same thing. When I first started fostering, I thought the same thing. Oh crap, they're going to show up. And,
Yeah.
and they're going to say, oh, you're not supposed to do that this way. Oh, don't do that. And you're right. All family services wants for bio and foster parents is just for us to be parents.
Right.
And to take care of the kids, to love them unconditionally, and to, you know, be there to support them and take care of them.
Right.
And so we're on the same playing field as far as that's concerned. When we come back, we're going to talk more about Pati's reunification story, and there's a lot of little surprises to come right after this.
Hi, I'm Mitchell. I'm from the Netherlands and we love foster teachers.
Welcome back to Foster Life. Today we're with Pati and Kira. We're talking about Meth to reunification, and she has such an amazing story. I've been just sitting here just soaking it all in and listening, and I love this story. So one of the things that Ethan and I are known for is we support our bio families all through. From the time we get the children, we're known for that.
Mhm.
And sometimes they call us for kids because they know that we're going to work with the bio families. But interesting enough, before we get into back into your story, every single one of our kids that we adopted, except for 2, parents ask us to adopt
Nice.
their kids. And I think that's because we kind of built that relationship or whatnot. And so this story, because I am always rooting for the bio parents, and I'm probably their biggest cheerleader, so this story makes me really happy. It makes my heart happy, that type of thing. So your first big obstacle, or I guess goal, was that overnight visit.
Mm-hmm.
What was the next?
Gosh, there's so many. I think just to complete the things that they had asked to do.
Right.
Because I got a sheet.
Uh-huh.
This is what you need to do. And
Yep.
so it was rewarding to just knock them out.
Right.
And I say knock them out loosely because it definitely isn't a fast process.
Oh, no,
Nothing
no,
is going to
no.
happen overnight.
Nope.
And so I think that was probably one of the frustrating things along, is that we'll see you in 45 days for court.
Right.
But you're like, I've got 4 months sober.
Right.
Well, they need more.
Yeah.
And so that was hard. Just working up to a weekend, working up, just following the steps.
Yeah.
I haven't forgotten the process that it took to get here,
Right.
and the steps that I had to take, but I will say that I've placed them probably in the back of my mind.
Mhm.
So I can't sit here and picture that plan in my head,
Right.
because there were so many steps, but just each goal, and whether it was even just the smallest goal of bringing a better attitude into the meeting,
Mhm.
being able to show up for one of the meetings at the DFS office and not have a trash attitude.
Right. And I think it's important because sometimes we'll get kids like right from the time that they take them, and because we do work with the parents will think, oh, well, I'll have them back in 2 months. And foster parents, if you're out there, it's okay to have a nice conversation with the bio parents and say, this is going to take a process, and we're going to work together with you, but this is a process.
Right.
Because I don't really want any parent to think that they're going to get them back.
2 weeks, right?
Yeah, 2 weeks or 3 weeks. As long as I'm clean the next time they come by or whatever, or my house is in shape, I'm going to get them back. I think it's always good to be very honest
Right.
and encouraging, but honest.
Right.
I mean, obviously, we don't want to tear people down. So, what was after the overnight visit? Then did you have a weekend?
I believe that's what it was.
Yeah.
I think, but it wasn't, again, like you said, it's not a fast process.
Oh, no,
It wasn't
no.
like, okay, well, they stayed the night on Tuesday, and then Friday and Saturday I got the weekend.
Right.
It's
No.
like, we did one night for 2 months,
Right.
and then I earned a weekend, and it was like
6 to 8 weeks is what we usually like to see.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that it's important to say that, because that was one of the discouraging things when I first started going to meetings, was that it felt that at every meeting, oh, they're coming back today.
Right.
So then we leave, be back in 30 days.
Right.
So I got my hopes up. They're coming back in 30 days,
Mm-hmm.
30 more days. And so I think that it is important to just maybe not get time frames in your head and to understand that the court, the caseworkers, the foster parents, that it's not necessarily about a date.
Mm-hmm.
It's about when are you healed enough to be who these children need you to be.
Mm-hmm. You're exactly
And
right.
for some, that's 8 months.
Right.
For some, that's 18 months.
Right.
And so I think that it's not fair to look at anybody else's case or anybody else's situation because we all heal differently.
Right. Exactly. And if you have hiccups or bumps, that doesn't mean that it's over. That just means that you might need a little bit more
Right.
time or whatnot. So after you had a weekend visit, then did you go to a full week?
Not for a long time.
For a long time. You did weekends for quite a while.
Yeah, and then when we're probably 10 months into the process at this point.
Right.
They started doing the home studies more, and we're coming to make sure more often. We're coming once a week to check on your house. We're
Right.
coming, and and I always joked, because it's so stressful. I always said I gotta hurry up and make my house looks like nobody lives here so that my kids can live here,
Right.
and because that's how it feels.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And so we did, and in the meantime, I'm doing counseling. I'm doing the side stuff that doesn't have anything to do with the visit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of underlying work that has to happen in order for the visit to happen.
Right.
So I'm attending group meetings and at the counselor's office and participating in whatever he's asking me to participate in, whether it's drug tests or evaluations or just kind of jumping through hoops, looking for jobs,
Mm-hmm.
doing things that will better my life so that I can more enrich their lives.
Right, exactly. So you've gone through that process. Once you knew, so before you went to court, did you know you were at the point of getting your kids back?
I would say no.
No.
I didn't count my eggs because I had got my hopes built up so many times
Right.
for the answer to be nope, you're still not ready,
Right.
that I finally had just decided they'll come home when the judge says.
Right.
So there wasn't any time that I went into court that I thought, okay, today's the day.
Right.
Well, except for the first couple, and then I got shot down, and I realized that that this is just a process that I think it's about relinquishing control.
Mhm.
About I literally, when you're the party that has lost the child, you are the least person in control.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody besides you has a little bit of power,
Right.
but your power is in your sobriety,
Right.
and so you hold all the power essentially.
Right.
And so we were kind of, they were telling me, hey, we're wanting to work on a home plan, we're wanting to do this. And so at some point, at about a year, we ended up getting Siley out of foster care.
Mm-hmm.
And the twins' dad at the same time, because they didn't actually go into foster care,
Right.
so he didn't have to give them back.
Right.
The judge, when they had took the kids, I had sole custody, and the judge said, you either sign over your rights or I terminate them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I signed over willingly my rights to Taylor and Kara, and their dad signed them back at the point that I was getting reunified with Siley.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Siley was probably home. Was Siley home before you? Or maybe a little bit after. But I think it was about a month, maybe 6 weeks before the twins came that I had Siley. So I had a little bit of time with just her. When you're a drug addict, and a mom,
Right.
it's a complete different, like you have to reevaluate everything you do. Like you have to learn how to be a mom.
Right.
Because you've been sitting in a bedroom getting high.
Right.
You don't know what it's like to sit in the living room with your kids and watch TV, and so it creates pressure. You know, it's a lot more stressful when you're involved. And so the Judge Sifferman finally, you know, signed off, and I had my kids.
So how long were they in care?
The girls were right at a year, and Siley, I mean, right at a year for all of them.
Yeah, right at a year. So it took a year to go through that process, and you really only had one hiccup. Is that right?
I had one
Yeah.
4 weeks
So
in.
yeah, and so that, I mean, it takes a little bit to go through the process, get it done. So once they came home, how was that?
It was such a blessing. I felt like that was my reward for my sobriety.
Right.
Like I finally had my kids here, and it, you know, it wasn't like we had this glorious Brady Bunch family now where we
Right. Oh,
did,
yeah.
you know, it was hard because you're still trying to learn how to be a sober mom and not fall back on the coping mechanisms that you've had
Right.
before. And so it's been I think it's fair to say that it's been a long process for all of us.
Right.
And October will be 6 years sober. My kids have been back in my home 4.5 years, and we still daily are still learning how to be a sober family who functions properly with right attitudes and expecting right outcomes.
Right. So one thing you were telling me before we started, before we came on today, every morning you do what? When
I
you wake
say to myself, I'm not getting high today.
up, I'm not getting high today.
And I've been saying it for 5.5 years, every day.
Every day. I'm not getting high today.
And I'll probably say it every day for the rest of my life.
Right.
Because even some people, you get to a point, 1 year, 2 years, you think you're removed from it, and that's just not the case.
Right.
Especially in the drug-riddled society that we have. The drugs and the alcohol are always going to be there.
Right.
And they come up at random times. 3 years sober, I got asked in the middle of Walmart, you know? And so, and I had said that day, I'm not getting high today.
Right.
And so I had my weapon that day for that, and I feel like that's the answer, is to not get so secure in your sobriety that you think it can't happen to you again.
Right.
And so every day I say to myself, every single day,
Right.
I'm not getting high today.
In 2011, Pati started going to college, and you were using,
Right.
right? You were using. She is going to school to be a special ed teacher, education, special
Yeah.
education, which would have probably been awesome because of your daughter and,
Right.
and everything. And so after you got your kids back, what did you do?
I worked hard at putting my life back together. I started working for an attorney for a while, and then I decided that I needed to finish my degree. And so in 2017, I was able to graduate from Drew University,
Yep.
and that was a pat on the back for myself because I was a high school dropout. And I think that it's important for people, especially people who are lost in addiction and are trying to find the way out to start over, to not put time limits on yourself.
Right.
Because I dropped out of high school in 1998,
Right.
my senior year. I didn't get my GED until 2009. I didn't graduate college until 2017.
Right.
It's about being able to stand up and make steady progression to whatever your goal is, and not saying, okay, well, that's a 4-year degree. Well, it took me 7.
Right.
So, but I'm still a college graduate, and
Yeah.
my kids still get to see that you finish what you start, even if it doesn't fit in other people's box.
And I think, for me, sitting here, the example that you're setting for your children, because none of us are perfect.
Right.
None of us. But it's what you do after those bumps or those hiccups or those speed bumps or whatever. It's what you do afterwards that sets the example for our children,
Absolutely.
and they're watching us and they see how we do things, and I can't help but think that your kids will always remember that, hey, not only did my mom have some hard times, she got us back, and she still went to college. So Pati is a single mom, right?
Yes.
She's got 3 kids. She has 2 with disabilities, correct?
Mm-hmm.
She's graduated college, and she has a job.
Absolutely.
And that's a pretty cool thing.
It is. I think that the thing for me is that there was a time when I first got sober that I thought my kids will never forgive me.
Right.
And they do. Kids are forgivers. They have resilient hearts that they don't throw stuff in your face.
Right.
However, I feel that that's because the best apology is a changed behavior.
Yeah.
And so my kids, I haven't sat and told them, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Have I went to them and told them that? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But they know I'm sorry because I don't continue to make those choices.
Right. Our actions speak louder than our words.
Absolutely.
And you know, you're exactly right. Even with the kids, because we adopt differently, and we've talked about this on the show before. But so our deal is with our adopted kids, if their parents are clean and sober and healthy and all of that type of thing, they can be a part of our family. So they can be a part of holidays, and they can be a part of birthdays. And obviously they can't just come and take the kids or anything, but we make them a part of our family. And even in that situation where our kids didn't go home, I still see the forgiveness that my kids have.
Absolutely.
With their bio parents. And so you're exactly right. They are resilient. And if you're watching today and you're thinking, my kids will never forgive me, Pat brings up a really good point. Your actions, that's what's going to speak to those young people. And what you do from here on out, that's what's going to speak to them. And that's what's going to show them. When we come back, we're going to be wrapping up Patty's story right here on Foster Life, and maybe Brian's going to talk or say something.
Maybe.
All right. We'll be back right after this.
Foster TV is looking for 12 nonprofits in the United States that serve or work with foster and adopted youth. Send us a short story or email about how you support the community.
So send your story today.
Welcome back to Foster Life. We're talking with Pati today about Meth to Reunification. God, you have an amazing story. And it's been, we've gone over our time spot. This is actually going to be a special edition on Wednesday. And I think it's worth it. I think so many people can, and everybody's on stage during this process. And I think it's important for all of us to work together and to do good things.
And I think that is the ticket, because I think that at the end of the day,
Right.
when you've given 100% to the bio parent,
Mhm.
even if reunification doesn't happen, you have your foster child
Yep.
who saw the whole thing.
Yep.
So it enables a different kind of love for you guys, because
Right.
you haven't killed off their natural family.
Mhm.
Whatever happened was placed at the feet of the bio parent. So whether it ends well or doesn't end well, it's not on you.
Right, exactly. It's been really good having
It has
you
been.
here today. And again, this story, I love it because if I had a magic wand and I could fix every family and get everybody's kids back, that's what I would do. When we came into this, Ethan and I only were going to do emergency placements. We weren't going to adopt kids, and we were just doing a service to the community. And it didn't turn out that way.
Right.
It turned out differently, but my heart is for you guys, and I am so glad that I met you. I love your story. I think it's going to help a lot of people out there, and share this story. Our videos are copywritten and they are all rights reserved and all of that stuff, but we encourage you to share them with foster parents, adoptive parents, bio parents, kinship parents, and share those often. You can catch Tristan and I on the road this summer for Tristan and Rob Foster Life. We're going to be doing 15 cities where we'll come and actually tape shows and address issues of fostering, adoptive, kinship, bio. We're also going to be doing some bio parent 2-hour workshops in 15 cities as well. If you'd like more information about that, you can email us at producer.fostertv@gmail.com. And Tristan and I would love to come to your city and meet you, and you can be a part of our studio audience, and that's always fun as well. We got 3 fundraisers coming up this summer. One in Nashville, Tennessee on Music Row, my own stomping grounds. And then we're also going to be in Loveland, Colorado this summer for another fundraiser. That's where I was born and raised. And we'll have a lot of people come out for that, and it should be a lot of fun. And I think our 3rd fundraiser this summer will be in Florida. Nice. Where it's nice and warm and the beach and all of those things. If you have comments that you would like to share with Pati and her family, make sure to put those right on here at any of our social media sites, and I'm sure that they'll see them, or we'll pass them on along to you. Come back again, and I'm so glad that you're a part of this. Anything when we go, is there anything you want to tell your mom right now?
Do you think that kids, I mean, you're the kid that got removed, so do you think that it's important for parents who have lost their kids to know that kids are forgiving, and that there is the ability to have a normal life again and to start over and have second chances?